welcome in. It's the Wrestling Mat. Hello, everybody. Good to be with you today. How's it going out there? Shout out to the members who are watching this live at 11 a.m. Eastern. Everybody else catching it wherever they get their podcasts. Thanks to our friends at the Believe Network. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or in the slot for everybody else at 5 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for being with us. Thanks, as always. Leave your comments down below. Good to have you here on the Wrestling Mat. A moderately important day in the world. Can't see it right. My vote sticker's there. There it is. Thank you. Shut up to Nerdy Dude. Thanks. Nice mug. Yes. Some more of my allegiances lie with Mario, Princess, and Luigi. It's my mug today. Hope everybody's having a good day out there. Hope everybody is keeping calm on what should be, I don't know, maybe a stressful day for some people around the world. Maybe not. But make your voice heard if you can do that today. I'll be making my voice heard on this show, but I want you to make your voice heard. Get in the comments if you're watching live. I'd love to get your comments just on... I'll take anything here today because Raw was a 4-match show, a pre-taped Saudi Raw. Felt every bit of that. Yes, we have some new number one contenders in Io Sky and Damian Priest. I still think the bigger story, much like it was on Saturday at Crown Jewel, is what's going on with the Bloodline. So we'll get into that today, but I don't really have a lot on Raw, admittedly. I don't think anything really jumped out to me in a big way. We obviously now have a month of build until Survivor Series, which is more useful from some storylines to others, but before we get into all that, make sure you head over to ProWrestlingTees.com/TheWrestlingMat. Get your Wrestling Mat merch there. We'd love to see you in your shirt. Send it over to us on social media at WrestlingMat23, Twitter and Instagram, at the Mat Camp in the same places. But ProWrestlingTees.com/TheWrestlingMat. If you're a Mat member, like you might be, you get discounts on that merch. As I said yesterday, though, also make sure to check out what Pro Wrestling Tees is doing for Chris Bay in his recovery from a broken neck. Check it all out there. Check it all out. So I'd be happy to take anything that you guys are thinking about in the comments, whether you're watching live down below, because it really wasn't all that eventful of a Monday Night Raw. I don't have all these things to sink my teeth into. And I'd say this also. There is this feeling to me, and I realize based on money and merch and ticket sales and all that WWE can do no wrong. Certainly feels that way. I don't happen to think, and this is strictly from me as a fan, I don't happen to think there's a lot to sink your teeth into right now in the storylines in WWE as a whole. Now, I am in on the Bloodline story. We'll get to more of that here coming up. I can't say I was enthused by Damian Priest winning the 4-way. I don't know how excited I am for Priest Gunther 2. I don't know how you guys feel about that. And I feel like, I don't know. Once again, love to hear from you in the chat on this and your comments after the fact as you watch this. There seems to be this feeling that Damian Priest is over and is popular, and he was a world champion. Although, as I have said, that world championship reign this year felt like a backdrop to everything going on with Drew and Punk. And Priest got more over and more cheered and probably raised his profile a bit after he lost the title and was with just Rhea. And has been stuck in this Judgment Day stuff. And he wins the 4-way last night, and it's him and Gunther whenever they will do that. I don't know if it'll be at Survivor Series or Raw before that, or who knows. But it does feel like Raw is, in some way, lacking star power. Now, You take Drew McIntyre, you take CM Punk, you take Rhea Ripley, hell, even take Becky Lynch out of the mix. It's a star power that's not there right now. And your single star that you've really created on the men's side in the last year is back to doing what he was doing before he came to Raw. I'm talking about Jey Uso. He is back involved with Jimmy and Roman and now Sami. And that is the story in the company right now. It's a great story. I'll get to more of that in just a little bit here. But it feels like if you look at Monday Night Raw, Raw doesn't have that big angle right now that is exclusive to Raw. And you're going to go, well, Matt, they just finished a pay-per-view. You're 100% correct about that. Yes, Io Sky and Liv is going to happen. And Damian Priest and Gunther is going to happen. And yes, it was a reset of sorts for the champions last night to have new contenders. But just because it's a championship match doesn't mean it's got a lot of juice behind it. Gunther Priest for Survivor Series doesn't feel that big. And I'm saying that not with the thought of, well, the rumor was Punk and Gunther. I can look at Gunther Priest and go, I'm not super into that match. I've seen it before. I don't think Priest is the guy to beat Gunther. Or once again, are you going to beat Gunther 2 times in a row? Because that's the issue with having him lose to Cody. Scott Gotta says, I guess the only difference now is that Priest is a clear babyface versus what he was at SummerSlam. And that's true. And Scott, thank you for the congrats on the wedding. I appreciate that. Thanks to everybody who sent me congrats. That's fair. Nerd Dude says, I will give Priest and Gunther 2 some time before I make my judgment, to be honest. Absolutely. I get that too. I just don't feel like Priest has hit the level of star power that he needs as a babyface to make me care about this match, to make me want him to beat Gunther, if that is the case. I am wondering if Priest gets this match before Survivor Series and Punk comes back before that, because I don't know about you guys, but I still look at Survivor Series as a fairly big deal. It's not on the level of SummerSlam. It's not on the level of WrestleMania. It's not on the level of Royal Rumble. But I still think it's a fairly big show, and it has been presented as such with War Games the last couple of years, and we're going to get War Games again this year. But is Gunther Damian Priest something that you want to see on Survivor Series? Do you want to see it beforehand? What I come back to is, I think right now, and there are some similarities to the Attitude Era, where the top story is so hot that sometimes that's all you need. And this is not the first time this has happened with the Bloodline. A lot of stuff on SmackDown, while the Bloodline was doing their thing, fell short of being interesting, fell short of being anywhere near as big as the Bloodline stuff. But it didn't matter, because the Bloodline stuff, specifically the Sami stuff, and that time when they were hot, and the trial of Sami, all that stuff, that was drawing. That was moving the needle in a very big way. You could see it. And they have it again. And I'll get to that in a second. I am happy that Liv is going to be in a feud now, theoretically, with Io Sky over the Women's World Championship. Not over Dom, not over revenge, not over love triangles. And I also say that knowing that stuff has clicked quite well. That stuff is doing, hitting that 1 million view mark on YouTube and such. So I get that works. It's not been for me. I think Io obviously can wrestle circles around Liv, but how does that work with Raquel and all that? And the question is now, where were they supposed to go? Because Rhea's injury is legit. She's out of the mix. Did they have to call an audible and go to this number one contender match and get Io in there? Maybe that's the case. I also come back to right now, we are staring at a very, obvious new versus old bloodline War Games match. No doubt about it, right? The women's match last year and even the year before, while we've seen, Damage Control or whatever, it's been thrown together more so. We have to book to the stipulation that's already decided. Whereas the Bloodline and the War Games matches for the men the last 2 years, it was Judgment Day and you got Randy back and all that stuff. The year before was obviously, the All-Star team with Sheamus and Ridge and Butch and Drew taking on the OG Bloodline. I mean, all that stuff has made, it has made sense to do. It doesn't feel like we're that close to an obvious women's War Games match. Now, maybe some of the foundation was laid out for that last night with Liv going back and forth with Bianca and Jade. I will say I like the fact that Bianca got mad that Liv was like, oh, watch out, she stabs her in the back. Like, they at least a little sprinkle there of hope. Little seed or two planted for the eventual Bianca-Jade breakup. Will that be happening in time to have those two face off at WrestleMania next year? We will see. Did they lay some of the groundwork for the Women's War Games match last night with Liv getting under their skin, getting involved with that battle royal? Obviously, Bianca nor Jade won and Io won. We got plenty of time. You got 4 weeks. So if that is the direction we're going in, sure. Now, a couple of things are being brought up here in the comments. First of all, Nerdy Dude says, what if they stretch Priest versus Gunther until Rumble? Imagine it like this: a traditional Team Raw versus Team SmackDown. Team Raw consisting of Priest and Gunther and 3 others, and from there a feud. Throw another one in here from Scott Gata. I haven't watched it on Raw yet, but do you think Survivor Series brings back the men and women's elimination matches? I feel like RKO at Crown Jewel will lead to a conflict between Pierce and Aldis. I agree with that. All I will say is if you're going to bring back the traditional elimination style matches, and they're going to be a Raw versus SmackDown thing, because I have said it, and I brought this up. Adam Pearce had a post on his social media a couple weeks ago talking about how he embraces the chaotic nature of Monday Night Raw. And he put polls up of, should I be breaking up fights or letting them fight? And he basically said, hey, that's what Monday Night Raw is. It's chaos. That's what brings to the table. And he took a shot at Aldis on that. And I wondered right there if that was the start of, hey, we're getting Raw versus SmackDown again. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again here, as we now have Survivor Series coming up next. if you're going to bring back the traditional elimination matches. And you're going to do Raw versus SmackDown. You just got to give me stakes. It's so, I don't want to say easy, but it makes too much sense to have a Raw versus SmackDown elimination traditional style match, 4-on-4 or 5-on-5, whatever. Brand pride doesn't mean shit. Raw won. We're the best. We're red. Whatever. Because if you have, and as we've seen with these traditional Survivor Series matches in recent years, you put baby faces and heels on the same side because they're representing their brand, and it never means a damn thing. All you have to do is put stakes on it. If it's red versus blue, if it's Raw versus SmackDown, you just got to put stakes on it. You just have to say, hey, if you survive, if you're on, whether you could say it's the survivors, you're on the winning team, whatever, they're guaranteed one of the last 10 spots in the Royal Rumble. They're guaranteed the right to be the general manager of Raw or SmackDown for that kind of stuff, which they've done before. They did it in the Austin Bischoff, sheriff, who's the GM, whatever of Raw, that during that time. If you're going to do SmackDown versus Raw, you have to make it mean something. Tell me that the winners are in the Elimination Chamber. Tell me they have a last 10 spot in the Rumble. Tell me they get to pick something. But don't make it about brand supremacy. It's gotta have meaning. When NXT won in 2019, all they did was go out that Tuesday night or Wednesday night, whatever the hell it was, and they went and celebrated it. Everybody out there, we won, we beat Raw and SmackDown, and it didn't mean a damn thing. Didn't matter. Now, here's the other alternative. Scott, you brought up traditional Survivor Series matches. Some of you will know this as longtime fans. Some of you will not know this at all. The Survivor Series was initially just built on all Survivor Series traditional matches, and they would put baby faces up against heels, and you'd have the Heenan family, and you'd have the Hulkamaniacs, or the Ultimate Warriors, or the Teamsters, or whatever the hell, everybody had something. And that's all it was, right? That's all it was. But I wouldn't have a problem if that came back. If you have a month and you want to build, for example, Final Testament and Miz taking on the Wyatt Six, and that is a Survivor Series elimination match, I'd have no problem with that being a reason to have an elimination match. If you want to build LWO against American Made, sure, go for it. If you want to build Nia, Tiffany, find your heels to be paired with them against a babyface group that's, Bailey, Naomi, whatever. Go ahead and do that. And that's just about the feud. That's just about two sides not liking each other. I'm totally fine with that. But if it's red versus blue, you're trying to tell me it's Raw versus SmackDown, there's got to be meaning to who gets the win in that match. And by the way, I think they can do a mix of this stuff. I think you can have War Games, and they will. I think you can have a Raw versus SmackDown match. I think you can have an elimination match that's just about what's going on with the feuds within the shows. I think you can do all those things. And maybe we will have Cody versus, I don't know, Kevin Owens. Maybe we'll have Gunther versus Punk or Gunther versus Damian Priest. We will see. But I agree that it does feel like there's something brewing with all this in Adam Pearce. The other part I would throw in terms of just stakes, the winning side gets the first pick in the draft next year. Throw that in there. Here's the other thing you could do with this. And tell me as you're listening to this, whether you're here live at 11 a.m. as a Matt member and we thank you, or watching after the fact, let me throw this scenario out to you. And I've done this before, so I'll do it again. If you're going to tell me Raw versus SmackDown, it's going to have stakes. And the winners get something. The winners get a spot in the chamber or the Rumble, whatever. Why can't, if you're going to do that and say this is Team Raw and this is Team SmackDown, you're going to put baby faces and heels on the same team. But if you're going to put stakes on it and you want it to matter more, guess what? You have qualifying matches to get on the team. Because, hey, I got to get in that match. I got to be there at the end, so I get a spot in the chamber. I get a spot in the Royal Rumble in the last 10 picks. So now, the next month of television is about getting qualifying matches to get on the team. And then once you set the teams, now you play up what that looks like, what that feud looks like. And not only the red versus blue aspect of it, then you could do, I loved when, Raw showed up at SmackDown and beat up SmackDown or vice versa. The Becky stuff with Ronda. Everybody remembers that. But then you also have, let's see, let me find, for example, let's say Andrade and Carmelo Hayes both qualify to be on the SmackDown elimination team. Now they have to coexist. And not in a way where that's become a joke. Can they coexist? They get thrown together. No, they have to coexist. And they have to find common ground, because if they win individually, they get something out of it. But they have to work together to get there. So you have that where they have to put aside their differences. It's not about coexisting just for the sake of it, because how often in those can they coexist matches are there any stakes? There's not. Doesn't matter. Whereas this, you could have qualifiers, you could have heels and face on the same side that have issues with each other. They have to put their differences aside, because why? Well, if they get into the Royal Rumble Elimination Chamber, maybe they go to WrestleMania. So all of a sudden, you can tie Survivor Series, and you can tie these qualifying matches to get on the Survivor Series teams right now, in early November, all the way to next April in WrestleMania. Couple of your options out there. Scott Gotta says, here's a stake. Any survivor automatically qualifies for the Rumble, and the winning brand secures the number 30 spot. There you go. I like that. Nerdy Dude, I would even go further, Matt. The winning team can save a superstar or pick a superstar from the loser being drafted immediately. Stakes, absolutely. You can make a deal. You've earned something. Just give me a reason to care about the match. You're a WWE fan. You're a fan of wrestling. You're not Team Raw or Team SmackDown. Nobody cares about that. Why would the wrestlers care about that? To put on the better show? No. It's not like it's a sports team when they're all working together for a goal. It's more like if the NFL banded together to go up against the CFL, the Canadian Football League, and then you're saying, well, they want to be the better team, so, Patrick Mahomes is going to play on the same team as, Stephon Diggs. Oh, he's a Texan. But they're battling for the sake of the NFL to take up the cause of the NFL. That's what two people on Raw being on the same side would indicate. Not that they're on the same team. We're representing our brand. Cool. Nobody cares. So just put stakes in the matches. For the most part, I have faith that can happen. However, I am let down by what we saw over the weekend. As was noted, really kind of washed away the crown jewel championship and what that mattered and live, and we'll see what Cody does with it on Friday. You had champion versus champion with no stakes that mattered to fans. As I thought about it more, I did not go into yesterday's show thinking about what is now stuck in my head, but it came out on yesterday's episode. They beat Roman Reigns and Gunther on the same night. Two guys who never lose, both lost on the same night. In a 6-man tag and in a match where neither major championship was on the line. Baffled, once again, by the fact that Gunther and Roman lost. And Roman losing became a background to the Sami stuff. And I'm all in on the Sami stuff. We'll get to that in a second. I know I keep pushing it, but I wanted to get to the other stuff first. And Gunther losing for the second time ever on the main roster. Those should be massive spotlights. Those should be talked about in an unbelievable, I can't believe that happened kind of way. And it wasn't the case. And it won't be the case. And those are wasted to me. Those don't matter. Things should matter. For the most part, whether it be the Money in the Bank, whether it be King and Queen of the Ring, whether it be the fact that we always seem to get, within a week or so of a last title defense, a tournament or number one contenders match or triple threat or multiple matches to set up a contender match or a battle royal. I'm all for that. That has been something under Triple H's creative eye that we have now become accustomed to in the best way possible. We are going to determine contenders in championship contenders in a tournament or a match. We're gonna make that matter. Make a win and loss matter. That has happened way more often than not under Triple H's creative. So I am hoping that we get more of that philosophy at Survivor Series. And I don't think it's asking a lot. I think they have a decent idea what the Mania card looks like right now. I think they have a decent idea of who they think will win the men's and women's Royal Rumble and the Elimination Chamber. And things will change and people will get hurt. It happened this year. Seth, Punk, all kinds of stuff happened. The Rock, foolishly not understanding that it was Cody's year and not his, and that more people wanted to see that. Things happen. Things change, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, sometimes because that's just how it has to be. But I don't think we'd be asking a lot to say that the Survivor Series matches can be connected to the Royal Rumble and Elimination Chamber, and then obviously to WrestleMania. Think of that story. I said this before. I'll say it again. Think of the story of somebody qualifying for one of these teams. Let's try this. How about this? Let's put this on. In the last couple of weeks, it feels like we have gotten a much more honest and openly frustrated Montez Ford. And he has spoken about how, they felt like they were doing all this stuff, head into Mania, Final Testament, and they win the match, and then nothing. And it feels like that frustration is coming out a bit more and more, as it should. And Bobby Lashley has spoken about that. And I'll talk more about Lashley this week. I wrote about him last week for the DraftKings Network about how AEW has a chance to right the wrong. And the ball can be picked up that was dropped with the Hurt Business, who never got to do anything in front of an actual crowd. And how the Hurt Syndicate now can get a fair shot. Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and MVP have a chance to now show us what we missed during the pandemic as fans being able to watch in the building with the Hurt Syndicate, the former Hurt Business. But bringing it back to Montez Ford. Let's paint this scenario, right? Montez Ford finds out that both him and Dawkins can't get on the team. They're they're each in qualifiers. So they wish each other luck. They're trying to get to Team SmackDown. You don't look at either one of those guys as they have been booked, pushed, presented as a big-time contender. They could be built up that way. Think about Shawn Michaels winning the 1995 Royal Rumble. Think about Stone Cold, quote, winning the 1997 Royal Rumble. More importantly, winning the 1998 Royal Rumble clean. Think about Drew McIntyre winning the Royal Rumble in 2020. Think about Bianca Belair winning the Royal Rumble in 2021. Launching points. Big launching points of, hey, we're going with this person. Sometimes you could see it. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it's not. Shawn winning in 95, he was a heel. He lost to Diesel that year, but it started his babyface arc that would bring him back to the Rumble in 96. And the boyhood dream and the Iron Man match, and he gets his crowning moment at WrestleMania 12 by beating Bret in overtime in the Iron Man match. But a story was told. His journey was told. They built that up. And I bring that up to say, what if Montez qualifies on Team SmackDown and Dawkins doesn't? And Dawkins says, bruh, I got you. You go get this done. It's your time. And Dawkins ends up on Team SmackDown. And Dawkins survives by himself, with one or two other people, whatever. And as a result, we now know he is in the Royal Rumble. And he's going in one of the last 10 spots. Sure. And he goes in the Rumble 2021. And what if he won? Or what if he got into the Elimination Chamber? Hell, call it back to the United States Championship Elimination Chamber from a couple years ago in Montreal that he was in. What if he got back into the chamber and the winners, the survivors, just got spots in the chamber? And then he wins the chamber. And I'm throwing it out there as hypothetical. And what if Montez ends up qualifying in Survivor Series, being on the winning team to get into a prominent spot into the Royal Rumble or Elimination Chamber, and he wins one of those things? And then it's Montez Ford versus Gunther for the World Championship at WrestleMania. You have now taken people on a journey of Montez Ford's on the come up. And think of Gunther. Gunther can rip him down. I showed up here and skyrocketed right past you. Hell, your own partner's a better wrestler than you. And Montez has to answer. But we get to go on the journey with Montez. And it's a journey that probably has started already, but it's a journey that shows the battles that he has to now win to get onto the Survivor Series team, to be a survivor, to go into Chamber or Rumble and win one of those. And you throw heels and you throw obstacles in his way. Now, all of a sudden, you've made the road to WrestleMania 6 months long. And you're giving time to cultivate a new big star. All of a sudden, you can tell that story in years going forward. Remember when Montez qualified for Survivor Series and parlayed that into a world championship at WrestleMania? Who could do that next? Now you have a hook for the years to come if somebody pulls it off. If somebody kind of runs the gauntlet, if you will. Qualified for the Survivor Series team. Survived. Took their rightful spot that they earned in the Rumble or the Chamber. Won that. Went to WrestleMania. Won. The WrestleMania road becomes more important, more meaningful, and for much longer. And they used to get WrestleMania programs going at Survivor Series. Goldberg and Brock started at Survivor Series in 2003, which culminated in their match at WrestleMania 20 in 2004. But they planted the seeds of Survivor Series, and that happens. There's a way to do that. There's a way to make more than just the Bloodline story matter at Survivor Series. Another one here. Nerdy says, how about this, Matt? Both the Profits and Motor City Machine Guns with a catch. Only the winner gets into Team SmackDown. So basically a fatal four-way. However you want to do it. As long as there are stakes that give us reason to now care. Not only about a red versus blue Survivor Series match, but it leads into the run. Everything means more. Starting with the qualifiers, which means you make a Raw match matter more. You make a SmackDown match matter more on regular television, which leads into the build of Survivor Series, which leads into the road to WrestleMania. It's so almost obvious. And I would say that if you brought the idea of this to any fan, not because it's my idea, just the idea of, hey, this will lead to this, this will lead to this, you're going to be way more invested in everything. You're going to be paying attention more. Scott Goddard says, my favorite seed planted at Survivor Series to WrestleMania payoff is Brett Vince. B-May says, winning team doesn't have to go to Saudi next year. Fantastic. That was good. speaking of Saudi and speaking of what was built off of Saudi and not much that mattered there, but Sami Zayn coming back to the bloodline. I said I'd get to it. We're going to get to it now. Because I asked this question, it's the title of the show, and it's something I have brought up already that I completely get, endorse, understand the idea of putting Jimmy, Jay, Roman, and Sami back together. I'm totally for it. You can sense that the people want it. They are not rushing it. They're also not dragging it out either. There is certainly money to be made of putting them back together as baby faces. People love them as heels. The love that they are getting right now as it's being teased, even Sami referenced it last night. Hey, you know, when we were each in there together, it felt like old days. He felt it, and it was very smart last night for him to say that. Because he still was like, yeah, but I can't do it again. But he felt the magic. Didn't even try to deny that he felt the magic. He felt the magic. Said he wouldn't do it. Because look what happened. When the four of us get together, things don't last. And by the way, the Sami version of the Bloodline really didn't last all that long when you look at the entire reign of Roman Reigns. But it's the best stuff. It drew the best, ticket-wise, ratings-wise. It created all kinds of matchups for multiple months. And now you want to put them back together as baby faces. It's the right move. They have every reason, not every reason, but they have an obvious reason to come back together. They're trying to take on the new bloodline. They don't want this happen again. Roman's trying to get back to the championship, but he needs help. Jimmy's with him because he got taken out by Solo's version of the bloodline. Jay is giving love to his brother, and okay, him and Roman are on the same page enough again. And now Sami's coming back into the fray because he wants to help Jay. And then Jay last night goes, hey, I was wrong. You're not blood, but you are a brother. Please come to SmackDown. And they have now made SmackDown matter even more. Because I want to see what the interaction is going to be like with Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. Sami was the first one out on his own, by his own choice. But he was also probably treated the worst of everybody. And then we throw in the left turn of him haluva kicking Roman by mistake on Saturday. How's that going to play out? Is Roman going to be pissed about that? What if they go in this direction? Roman goes, hey, we're good. I deserve that. The key to all of this has been Roman putting everybody that he used to keep under his thumb, everybody that used to save his championship, everybody that did everything for the bloodline, but really for Roman. He's had to put every one of those guys, and by everyone I mean Jimmy and Jay so far, on his level. Acknowledge him. Admit that he's proud, or say yeet, and Sami's the next one. Roman has to be humble. Sami doesn't have to be humble. Jay helped Roman. Jimmy helped Roman. Sami helped Roman. And now he needs their help. And they should all get the love that they never really got from Roman when he was champion, running things as the tribal chief. And it's a very babyface thing to do. And you saw the reaction on Friday when Jimmy and Jay and Roman hashed it all out and how into that reunion people are. Adding Sami to the mix only takes it up a notch. But I asked this question. right now, we have 4 weeks until Survivor Series to rebuild the bloodline, the origins, to get them where they need to be heading into a battle with the new version of Bloodline in War Games. But then what? Then what happens? Is this I'm back with you, and I say this from a Sami and Jay standpoint primarily. Hey, we'll come back together for this because we have each other's back. But what happens on that Raw after Survivor Series? What happens on that SmackDown after Survivor Series? Let's say this new version of the Bloodline goes down to the old Bloodline. Is there any reason? What's the motivation for Jay to stick around with Roman? If they take out and beat the new Bloodline, what's the motivation for Sami to stay in the mix? Why can't Sami and Jay go back to Raw and do their own thing? They could still be friends. There could be a loose alignment. I just wonder, A, from a storyline standpoint, what sense does it make to keep them together after the events of War Games? And we'll see. That could go in a couple different directions. But the other part is business. The other part is business. Are there shirts? Is there a tour? Are there other matches? Will they try to get more out of this Bloodline reunion from a money standpoint? You know, I talked about the Shield coming back together and never feel like they got anywhere near that same kind of cohesiveness, you know, because they were all singles guys at that point. They were all world champions at that point. They came back together. People were happy to see them back together, and they ran with that, you know, until Ambrose left and all that stuff. But it wasn't the same kind of magic. My question is, what does this OG Bloodline look like as baby faces beyond Survivor Series? Is there more to it? Would you want to see more? Or does it make it more special if it's a one-off? Because I'm more in that direction. Like I said, I don't want Jay to lose the momentum he has as a single star. I would say the same for Sami. You can say they're equals to Roman for this month, but beyond that, they're all proud guys who want to be world champion, and wouldn't make sense to keep them together. They're not going about the tag titles anymore. Every one of those guys wants to be the man. So what does a Bloodline reunion look like in terms of how long? How long could you stretch it out? And is it easier to tie up the story as opposed to breaking them apart again or whatever, of just, hey, I'll be here for this, and then I'm out of here? That's where I would go with Sami and Jay. Roman's still got you can have Jimmy by his side. That's fine. But I think everybody's got to still go down their own path. And that's what factions are supposed to create. You break up the faction to hopefully get new single stars out of that, where you didn't have everybody as a single star. Talked about yesterday with Evolution. Rick and Hunter were the established guys. Randy became a world champion. Batista became a world champion. That's what you want. You want them to go in a faction, needing to be part of a group to be part of a push or be interesting or whatever it may be, but then you want that faction to create more stars. That's what the Bloodline has done. You just don't want to lose what you've created. Nerdy dude. I don't know if they reunite for a long time personally, but you could have Sami versus KO as a feud from here there. Absolutely 100%. I'm fully on board with KO and Sami taking a Sami returns the bloodline into the next chapter of KO and Sami in their rivalry. Yes, do that, please. That's a way to get Sami out of it. No doubt about it. B May says, do you think there's anywhere where Jay becomes the guy and is a world champ at the end of this? Yes, I do. I don't know if I would have said that a year ago. I have been pleasantly surprised by how well Jay has done on his own. Charisma, merch, entrance. I think his matches are fine at best, but it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Because he's got a catchphrase, he's got crowd control, he's got charisma, he's standing out on his own. Jey Uso, right now and for a long time, has been Jey Uso, not Jay of Jay and Jimmy the Usos. Not Jey Uso, the guy who is going to make sure Roman keeps the title. Jey Uso has done this by himself, without Jimmy, without Roman, without Solo, without Roman, without Heyman, without you name it, without Sami. They've been around or hovering, but it's been about Jey Uso. You could say to someone who never saw Bloodline stuff, watch Jey Uso in the last year, 6 months. If there was some way you could let them watch without them knowing where Jey Uso came from, he would come across as a single star on his own. To some, I believe that. If you told me, hey, watch the last 6 months of Jey Uso, I've never watched anything before that, I don't know anything about the Bloodline stuff, I would think, damn, he's a singles main event star on his own. That's how good he's been. That's how well he's been booked. That's how over he is. That's the connection he's made with the crowd. You can't mess with that. You don't want to mess with that. And I think there's a lot of momentum there. And be made to your question, where I would say that the number one babyface on Monday Night Raw, who we see on a weekly basis, so I'm discounting CM Punk a little bit, but the guy who has the most potential as a world champion is not Damian Priest, it's Jey Uso. Jey Uso has already main evented WrestleMania. Jey Uso has already been involved in multiple WrestleMania main events. Jey Uso is making a ton of money for the company and for himself with merch. He is over as hell. That entrance, if he had a world championship entrance at WrestleMania, I think it would feel like a big deal. I do believe he can end up as world champion at the end of all of this. I don't know, if that's the world champ or the WWE title, whatever, but no, I do think he's gotten to that level. So they're doing a good slow burn with all of this, and I think it makes SmackDown a very interesting show this week. Nerdy Dude says, I have a question to which you might have some inside information. Yesterday, I watched NXT with Breezango as tag champions. Do you know if this team was created by Vince or Breeze and Dango? So they did the Fashion Police stuff, which became a digital thing that they shot, and then it just worked. And it's a tag team, so it just kind of, from everything I could tell, it was about them. They had that great match with the Usos. They were dressing up like they were fun. They were making things happen. Both of those guys had went through the FCW system and all that, whether it be Johnny or Dango, whatever, and Tyler Breeze, Mike, whatever. No, I think they were doing that Fashion Police stuff, and it was a digital thing, and that was a time when digital and TV didn't really care or want to know or were in sync with what the other was doing, and There were people in digital like, hey, this is fun. Let's try this. The JBL and Cole show, the second screen experience, which kind of created the New Day. Sometimes that just gets pushed through because it gets over enough. I think that was Breeze and Dango. As I've talked about, though, Vince not super really ever into pushing tag teams because it's pushing 2 versus 1, and that costs more money. That was a thing for a while. Unless it's a big draw, we're not going to push tag teams at the main event level. That's a dollars and cents thing. I'm not saying it's like that anymore, but that's just kind of how it's been. So there is no NXT tonight. And with that being said, and with the election and everything, I don't think we're going to have a show tomorrow, barring some major piece of wrestling news that breaks between now and 11 a.m. tomorrow, Eastern tomorrow. There's a lot going on in the world, and there's no wrestling tonight. So very likely no show tomorrow, but then a massive show on Thursday because I'll be reacting to the Dynamite episode and to NXT running out of the ECW arena. So Thursday will be a big episode. I think we're going to take tomorrow off just because there's a million things going on, but not wrestling. So with that being said, please make sure you're subscribed here at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Thanks to the members who were with me live at 11 a.m. this morning. And thanks to everybody else who joined whenever they wanted to, whether they listened on their favorite podcast app. Please go subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast on the Believe Network. Please subscribe to thewrestlingmatchshow.com here on YouTube. That's free, but if you want to become a member, you get the show live. You get to interact in the chat first and foremost. You do that by hitting join down below, going to thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Plenty more perks, working on some stuff for this week and next week for members. Certainly some retro Survivor Series stuff. But what do you want to see? What do you want to do here? Let us know in the comments down below. Tweet us at WrestlingMatt23 or the Matt Camp on Twitter and Instagram. And I will be back this week to talk about wrestling even more right here on the Wrestling Mat. Go vote, everybody. I will see you later this week.